How's it going, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about Disc Priests in Shadowlands. I'm going to be going over what Conduits I think is good, what Covenant I think is good, the Soulbinds, the Legendaries, and what's new with the spec, in terms of talents and abilities gained. Disc Priest seems to be one of the strongest healers on beta right now. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. I personally haven't tested it myself, but I have played into it a few times, and the damage is noticeably high, the healing is noticeably high. I'm not going to really get too much into numbers right now, though, because sometimes numbers can get tweaked really easily, and then the strength of a spec can fall down quite hard. And if I remember correctly, at the start of BFA, Disc Priests were also very strong, and it just turns out Blizzard ended up nerfing their damage, and then they were kind of weaker throughout the rest of the expansion. So in terms of viability, I feel like Priest is definitely up there, but it definitely feels like one of those classes where since damage and healing are both important for them, if you tune one, to be a little bit too low, you hurt their damage. That also hurts their healing. And if you you hurt their healing a little bit and their damage can't keep up, you have to, their healing can't keep up, so you could spam damage. That is, they could end up falling behind, I guess, pretty quickly. But right now, I think that people think that they are the strongest healer on beta. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about what's new with Disc Priest right now. And I would say that my favorite change that Blizzard made was making Shadow or Death baseline. This was kind of in Legion, or excuse me, BFA and Legion, I guess, is a talent called Premonition. Having Shadow or Death come back, not only for damage, but also for CC break, is an awesome tool that Disc can have, because Death can actually, heal people with Atonement. Okay, never mind. I read right there. It does not trigger Atonement. It cannot heal people with Atonement, but either way, it's still important for your kit, because it actually does a lot of damage, especially to targets below 20% health. It's almost like an execute, which Shadow Priests have, or Shadow Priests had in the past. So you might want to save that for, kind of like those burst kills towards the end when people are getting low. But it's also really, really great to avoid crowd control. I think Premonition was a 12-second cooldown, if I remember correctly, so that obviously this is a little bit of a higher cooldown. But as you can see, since the cooldown is in green, it's affected by haste, which means if you have Power Infusion up, it goes to a 14-second cooldown. And as the expansion progresses, the cooldown is going to get lower and lower. So it's probably going to feel better towards the end, and there is a legendary that I'll talk about that's going to reduce the cooldown of that, which is actually going to be pretty good. Secondly, I think one of the more noticeable spell changes is Power Infusion. If you guys watch the Holy Priest guide, Priest once again, or Disc Priests also get this, but Priests once again have Power Infusion. I think Power Infusion is a lot of fun to press, not only for yourself, also for your teammates. I think that this spell is going to be pretty powerful. I wouldn't say it's overpowered. There's a legendary that makes it so if you put it on someone else, you also get the benefit. That could be a good legendary that you want to use. But Power Fusion, just overall, a really fun ability to press. It used to also reduce the mana cost of your spells, but it's not that big of a deal. I think it's still pretty. I think it's still a pretty strong button to have. So definitely something that's pretty nice. Disc Priest once again got Mind Blast back. It doesn't really look like it does too much damage, but Disc Priests are one of the only healers that actually have 2 healing trees, which is really nice. So it's just another button to press on that Shadow School lockout. I think right now you only really have Shadow Men to cast. But if you're already topped, or the teammates are topped or whatever, Smite used to absorb damage from the enemy, like the damage that they deal, but now they kind of bake that into Mind Blast. So 1200 damage, and also absorbs 4000 damage that they're going to deal, which is actually pretty significant. It might be something that you just want to press on cooldown, and that'll end up being a pretty good amount. This is probably one of the best quality of life changes that Blizzard could have made, and it's like one of the things that a lot of people were very frustrated with the GCD change. But Rapture now automatically applies a shield to the person you're targeting. So if I want to Rapture on this guy, instantly applies a shield, and these shields are very, very strong. I don't think you can repress Rapture. You're gonna have to actually press shield after that. But it's 8600, man. That's crazy. That is a huge shield. And just so you guys are aware, the shields are actually just as powerful as they are on Holy, but Rapture is like what really makes the difference. And then obviously, I guess as you get more mastery, your shields will become more powerful. And then also you have Mindseer. I don't think you had Mindseer in the last expansion, which isn't going to be really too valuable in PvP, but it is pretty nice, like when you have someone in stealth, or you're trying to get someone out of stealth, or maybe stop a drink behind the pillar or something. So there's a small niche for Mindseer where you're trying to knock someone out of stealth, or perhaps you're targeting on a pet and it goes behind the pillar and you Mindseer it and it hits everyone behind, and you're doing a little bit of AoE damage. But overall, it doesn't really feel like Disc Priest got too much of their toolkit, but it's not as bad as some of the other healers. It feels enough to where, you know, you feel like you're going into a next expansion and you're excited. So I'm not too disappointed with Disc Priest. I just personally feel like Holy Priest got more, and I feel like overall Holy Priest is a little bit more exciting. And I think both of the specs are actually good. I think Priest might just be the best healer right now in general, potentially even both specs. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Covenant a little bit. So the Covenant that I've decided to choose, the one that I think is kind of flat out the best, is going to be Venthyr. And the reason I think Venthyr is good is because I feel like Priest have always had a pretty big issue with mobility. And I think Door of Shadows is a wonderful way for Priest to kind of get an additional mobility and kind of, you know, have more of a passive play style and then kind of teleport in when they want to go aggressive with those fears. I think that's really, really nice for Priest. The only thing is it is on the Shadow Tree, so that could mess with you a little bit. I think some of the other healers may have an advantage going Venthyr because the Shadow School doesn't actually hurt them if they get kicked, so you do have to keep that in mind. I also think that Mind Games is just absolutely incredible for Disc Priest. So Disc Priests are all about doing damage, and Mind Games does a ton of it. 5,600 damage right here, and it could do even more depending on crits and whatnot. It also is affected by Atonement. It's just a really powerful spell all around, and once again, it's on that Shadow Tree, so you're gonna have some really powerful spells on the Shadow Tree in this expansion. It kind of feels like you have a lot more options than just that Shadow Men. So Mind Games and Door of Shadows are both really, really powerful, and I would definitely recommend playing Venthyr as Priest. And I'm going to go into the Conduits here. So, excuse me, this is what's called a Soulbind, and then over to the right here are called Conduits. I think that this first set of Soulbinds are the best one. And right off the bat, you have a pretty... I would say a pretty difficult choice. Door of Shadows, which is your teleport, can disorient everyone around you when you appear for 6 seconds. I believe that's nerfed to 2 seconds in PvP. And I also believe that is on the diminishing returns of Fear. So I actually decided just to put my Soulbind into the movement speed increase, because like I said, I feel like priests have a little bit of issues with mobility. If this wasn't on DR with Fear, I think that I would take it. But the fact that it is on DR with Fear, I think that the speed might just be better. This is kind of irrelevant. And then this is something that's really good for priests as well. Duration of incoming interrupts, snare, and root effects are reduced by 25%. That's very, very powerful. It allows you to kind of cycle through those trees faster. If you get kicked on Holy, you can get there quicker. If you get kicked on Shadow, you can get there quicker. It's also going to make it really, really hard to lock down a priest, because since you have 2 trees, you get interrupted on one, you get interrupted on the other one. With that reduced time, you might already be able to cast the first one again, so that's pretty powerful. And then Thrill Seeker, this is kind of just like a Bloodlust, you know, increase your haste for 20% for 10 seconds, kind of passively as combat rolls around. So that's pretty powerful in general. I would say this is definitely the best Soulbind to take. I guess Soulbind row. Now, talking about the Conduits, Disc Priest definitely has some pretty good ones. The 3 major Conduits that you want to look for in terms of potency is the Venthyr specific one. Mind Games lasts an additional amount of time and deals additional damage or healing. That is very, very powerful. I think Mind Games is like, right now it's almost like a win condition. It does a lot of damage. So I would definitely recommend taking that one. And then you have the 2 that I have in right now. The damage of healing of your first Bolt of Penance is increased by 15%. I think that's pretty good. And then also Rapture Duration. It's not actually working right now in beta, but Rapture Duration being increased and the Power Word Shield Enhancement being increased is really good. So I'm kind of torn between... I guess the Penance one and the Rapture one, because I feel like Rapture is such a powerful cooldown that you want it to last longer, and you want the shields to be more powerful. It almost feels like you'll be immortal. But this one's kind of better over, you know, long periods of time where Rapture is on CD, because I kind of feel like Shattered Perceptions might be necessary, but maybe it's not. You know, maybe these 2 are just better, and the Mind Games one's not quite as good. Now, for the Endurance Conduit, I think that this is really powerful. Casting Power Word Shield on an ally also shields you for 10% of the amount. I just think this is really strong. I mean, as Disc Priest, you're going to be shielding people nonstop. You throw that up there, you get yourself a nice little shield, and then it also scales with Rapture. You put a Rapture shield on someone, you get a nice little shield. It's just literally free healing. I would say for an Endurance Conduit, free healing sounds pretty good. And then if you watch the Holy Priest guide, once again, I think this is one of the best finesse conduits out there. Dispel Magic, Purify, and Massive Spell cost 20% less mana. Everyone knows that priests have kind of always had mana issues. This is going to kind of counteract that a little bit. Your Dispels and your Massive Spell, more notably, which has always been pretty expensive, 3,200 mana, should already have that reduction, is reduced. So it's saving you mana there. So in terms of Covenant, Soulbinds, and Conduits, we kind of knocked all that out. There's not really too much to talk about in terms of the other ones. I definitely think that Venthyr is just the most powerful. And now I'm going to talk about the Legendaries a little bit. From what I saw, when I was crafting legendaries on my Disc Priest. It felt like some of the other specs only had 1 or 2 that could be good. Something that's kind of exciting on Disc Priest is it definitely feels like there was multiple that you could have, depending on the situation. So the first one I want to talk about here is reduced Shadow Word Death cooldown by 8 seconds. Now, if you're fighting against something that has heavy CC and you feel like you're going to be deathing very often, this seems really, really good. Because, I mean, right now, death cooldown is already 17 seconds. So this would put it at 9 seconds. That just gives people such a small window to actually crowd control you. And it kind of gives you that power in hand to actually, I guess, counteract people trying to CC you. So I really, really like this legendary. I don't think you're going to play it all the time, but in the mages, this might be really good. I would say something that throws off a script in PvP is something that's always going to be really difficult for people to deal with. So, for example, if you're fighting against those pesky mages or warlocks or whatever is trying to CC you, and you Shadow Word Death and they think it's on a 17-second cooldown, but you're playing the legendary, you're going to get what I would call a free death, because no one's going to fake death when they think it's still on cooldown. So this legendary can definitely throw people off a little bit, and then on top of that, you know, it still scales with haste, so this 11-second cooldown is going to go to a 9-second cooldown, I believe, 8.4 seconds, there you go. That's going to make it really difficult to CC you. So if you're fighting against the heavy CC comps, I think this is definitely a very strong option. And then here we have, during Rapture, Powered Shield costs 20% less mana and applies 6-second longer atonement. I think this is pretty good. I don't know how good it's actually going to be, because I don't really think that you're going to struggle to keep atonements up. It's more or less, do you need the mana? Which I said, you know, Disc Priests have generally, they've been a little bit weaker in terms of mana, and I kind of forgot to go over talents, which I will go over, but Power Word Solace is nerfed a little bit. It was a 10-second cooldown before, and I think people played that for mana, so mana restoration might be a little bit worse. The only notable change in the talent tree is Spirit Shell. I don't think Spirit Shell is ever going to be used in PvP. I think that Rapture absolutely blows this ability out of the water, 100,000%. So it's a shame to see, you know, a cool ability come back, but I just don't see a situation where you would ever, in a million years, want to use Spirit Shell over Rapture, replaces Rapture. That just flat out stinks. You just literally press this button, and this guy's shielded for 8,000, you know, and then this guy's shielded for 8,000, and then that guy's shielded for 8,000, and that guy's shielded for, you know, why would I ever want to get rid of that? I don't think you do. So moving on to legendaries once again. Power Word Shield instantly heals the target for 585 and reflects 30% of the damage absorbed. Now, if you guys remember Priest back in the day, this is called Reflective Shield. And this legendary seems flat out the best. I have not actually tested it to see if it works with Atonement, but my guess is it probably does, which just kind of double dips. Overall, it's just going to be really good. You know, especially during that Rapture phase, like, you are just going to do a ton of damage, and people are just going to rip themselves apart from attacking the Power Word Shield. I think this is probably going to be the go-to in almost every single situation, and definitely a you know, warm welcome back to the Priest Toolkit for for Reflective Shield. This used to be something that was really, really strong back in like 2s back in the day. The final legendary that I picked out here, actually I talked about it a little bit. I didn't actually craft this one. The Power Infusion one. It's a nice quality of life thing. You know, if you're playing like Rogue Mage or something and you toss it on your mage, you also get the Power Infusion. At the end of the day, I don't think it's strong enough to actually want to use over something like this, but it was worth noting. And I don't really think this one is that good, but I figured, you know, maybe in some weird dampening setting, you'd maybe want this. Purge the Wicked expires on a target. 3 allies within 30 yards are healed for 700. It seems pretty low. I think this is probably the worst one out of all the ones I showed you. So probably not really too crazy. Oh, I also forgot to go over this one, but I don't think this one's that good either. For 15 seconds that you don't cast Shadow Men, the healing your next Shadow Men's increased by 50%. That is just such a long time to not cast Shadow Men. It could be good if the games are really, really, really fast. Basically, you're only going to get one use out of it, essentially. So on beta, believe it or not, it's probably actually decent, but yeah, I don't think that one's going to be too great overall. Definitely excited for the Reflective Shield back. I think that's one of the reasons why Priests are so strong right now, because you toss out a Rapture and, you know, 30% of the shield is going to immediately reflect back on the person, and you're gonna have to be careful, man. It's almost like Thorns in a sense, you know. Right now you have to stop attacking the Thorns if you're dying. That's definitely going to be the case with Reflective Shield, Powered Shield. So melee, watch out. Melee, watch out. The final notable change that just got was Thoughtsteal. Holy also has this, and Thoughtsteal is just incredible. Thoughtsteal is one of the coolest design abilities to ever exist in WoW. I would expect that at some point it may get nerfed onto Resto Druids because stealing Rejuve seems really, really crazy. But stealing Polys from Mages and stealing Fears from Warlocks is just an incredible amount of utility that you're probably going to want to take in most situations. So overall, Disc Priest looking really powerful. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this helped you kind of understand where Disc Priest is at and what you may want to choose in terms of Covenants and things like that. But thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.
That's what they call me. Promise that you never be lonely. Be the fan, that's what they call me.